From the purest form of maple syrup, extracted drop by drop from trees in New York, to the finest polished rice sake crafted by Japan's youngest female sake brewmaster, we uncovered the stories behind some of the world's most expensive foods. Our first stop is Nigeria, where stockfish became a staple in local cuisine, although it's processed miles away in the freezing winds of Norway. Almost everyone at this market in Lagos, Nigeria, is here to buy stockfish. A coveted source of protein, it sells for $65 per kilogram, 7 times as much as other popular fish like croaker. But no one in Nigeria can actually produce this unique dried cod. The fish comes from thousands of miles away in Norway, where entire operations are dedicated to supplying the stockfish demand in Nigeria.
It's 99.9% for Nigeria.
A full drying rack like this is worth over $500,000. But because the supply from Norway is volatile, prices fluctuate, and sellers here in Nigeria have no control over how much fish gets here. So, how did stockfish first connect these two economies? And why is it so expensive?
We add our stockfish. The stockfish is very important to Nigerian cuisine because of the texture and flavor it gives to the dish, especially when you want to have that local smell, local aroma to your food.
This is the fishing village of Henningsvær in Lofoten, Norway. It's the ideal location for drying stockfish. Cod migrates here at the start of the winter. After it's caught, the fish is graded by size and tied to be hung on racks, heads and bodies separately. The weather here is cold, dry, and reaches -10 to -15 degrees Celsius with wind chill. It's so cold that there are no insects that could eat the fish, but not cold enough to freeze the fish. And it dries the fish so much that after a few weeks, not even birds are interested in it anymore. These racks have the capacity for as much as 4,000 metric tons of stockfish.
It's a way of conservation. You know, the yield is 23%, so that means that we take out all the water. It's a way of preserving the proteins.
Exposed in the freezing wind, it takes 3 months for cod to fully dry and become stockfish. Once that happens, stockfish can be stored for up to 3 years, making it an extremely valuable resource. This is a longer method than using salt or artificial dryers, which can dry cod in a week, but the long wait pays off. Companies like Nora's buy fresh cod for 52 kroner, a little less than $5 per kilogram from fishers. Once dried, its bulk price is around 150 kroner per kilogram. In Nigeria, it won't be sold in kilograms, but in 30-kilogram bags.
This heads, after 2 months approximately, we can take it indoor after dry it, and we press it into 30-kilo jute bags and ship in 40-feet containers, and it all goes to Nigeria, yes.
Up until 60 years ago, the word stockfish meant little to nothing in Nigeria. But after the Nigerian Civil War killed more than 1 million people, mostly of starvation in the late 60s, everything changed. Among the emergency supplies other countries sent to Nigeria to combat the famine, Norway sent stockfish. While Norwegians still eat it in restaurants now, almost 100% of the stockfish produced in Norway is headed to Nigeria, especially for home cooking. In 2015, Nigeria imported $8.94 million worth of stockfish from Norway.
No, this call from Norway. We don't have challenge selling stockfish when we import it, and we sell as much as we bring.
Nonso is a stockfish dealer. He's spent 20 years in the business, going from retailing to dealing directly with imports. He sells his stockfish at the Otto White Sand Market in Lagos, Nigeria.
Stockfish, it comes in this first species. So there is the health aspect of it, which is also into 3 types. There's one that comes with jaw, there's one that comes without jaw. There's also type of different heads. So the same way it is different, the prices are different. So into that meat, there are also 2 types of the meats. There are the one without skin and the one with skin. Then aside from that one too, there is also the body, the long one. That one also is more expensive. And even in that body, there are up to 4 different types.
The hot and humid climate makes it impossible for stockfish to be dried here, so importing it is the only option. The stockfish takes 6 weeks to get to Nonso from Norway.
A bag of body here is above $500 and above $300,000. Then the main body, the long one, is up to $800,000 to $900,000 here, which is almost close to $1,000 above.
But those prices will not be the same tomorrow. Prices fluctuate depending on the season, and because it's a more convenient trade currency than Norwegian kroner, prices are set in US dollars. They depend on the naira to dollar exchange rate of the day. And even then, there are 2 different exchange rates: the official one, set by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and the black market rate. Black market rates, although unofficial, often give a better picture of the real market conditions.
Most of us end up going for black market because you can be in a queue for dollar for months.
In Nigeria, these 2 exchange rates are very different. Which one you pick to sell your stockfish can make or break a business like Nonso's.
That's a major challenge in every business in this country. The restriction and access to gold. The difference between government rates and black market is over 100. That's a lot of money. So it makes the business difficult and also makes it expensive for consumers. So it's a very big challenge. But for now, we are dealing with this now. We don't have much option. We have to continue our business.
In 2021, to encourage local fish farming, the Nigerian government added stockfish to a list of over 40 items that importers have to buy with actual US dollars, not naira, converted into the same amount. For Nonso, this made trading stockfish even more challenging.
15 years ago, a container of stockfish could be around 7-8 million naira. But today, a container of stockfish with worth between $75,000 to $80,000. In current black market range, prices are about from 17 million to 50 million. Because of the challenges of accessing forests through central bank normal rents, a lot of people have left the business.
The rise in energy costs has also made the operations in Norway more expensive to run, and that also reflects on the final price at the market here.
Because the people go for which one they can afford. So now they are doing a method that instead of allowing to be there to spoil, we now start slashing. So when you move around the market, you'll see people slashing the stockfish to a smaller size that people can afford.
I really can't place a time frame to how long I've been cooking stockfish. I grew up knowing stockfish. I learned to use stockfish also in cooking the local dishes, the local delicacies, especially our soup and stews. Here is our seafood okra. in all its beauty. How lovely it looks. First of all, you feed with the eyes. The burst of flavors, the taste, all combining to give this wonderful aroma.
Back in Norway, the Nigerian market is too important to lose.
And it's funny because we have been trying to sell to other countries these products also, and every time we think we try to found a new market, then we find out that it was really the Nigerians living in the Netherlands or England or the US. So it's always the Nigerians who like this.
This brown paste is the base for the world's most expensive soy sauce, and it won't be ready to sell for another 20 years. While some popular soy sauce brands cost less than bottled water, Gamebishi's 20-year aged soy sauce can reach £99 for only 55 millilitres. It's because of this thick soybean mash called koji. It's the key to this soy sauce's flavour. Here in the city of Higashikagawa, Japan, Gamebishi dries and ages koji with a recipe that's more than 2 centuries old.
で乳酸発酵してでいろんな酸味になったり甘み、うまみ、塩味、苦みこの5つのバランスが醸し出していくっていう。
So, what makes this method worth preserving? And why is Gamebishi soy sauce so expensive?
来た時なんかもう全く醤油の作り方も知らないし、もう醤油なんて混ぜたらできるだろうみたいな感じたのが全然もう大間違いね。
The complexity of this soy sauce is achieved by fermenting it for days and aging it for years. This traditional recipe allows the company to create flavors that aren't possible in mass-produced soy sauces.
まあ実際僕もこの会社入って初ソセっていうものを舐めた時にすごい衝撃を受けたというか、普通の醤油って結構なんて言うんでしょう。まあ辛いものであったりとかしょっぱいっていう表し方をするんですけど、そうじゃなくてまず酸味がくるんですよね、口の中に。
High quality soy sauce starts with its most basic ingredient, soybeans. This never-ending cloud streams from the machine, steaming soybeans inside.
はじめ朝この中に水が入ってたんですけど、その中の水を全部出すのと冷たいもともとあった空気と今入れてるあったかい蒸気を全部入れ替えるために
It's a seemingly simple first step that can make or break the entire product.
これが冷たい空気が中にある状態で飴を蒸しちゃうと飴自体が蒸し蒸れ出来上がりの醤油の味が変わってくる。
After 18 hours soaking and steaming, the beans should be soft and ready.
蒸し上がりいいと思います。しっかり中まで火が通ってるので、いい麹ができることに期待してます。
To turn steamed soybeans into the one-of-a-kind koji, the beans have to be combined with barley and mold spores. First, Tepe prepares the barley in a dry room, dusted with finely ground wheat.
結構機械麹はどちらかというと麦が粗いですね。
Unlike other soy sauce breweries, Gamebishi grinds it down to fine powder.
多分こんな感じなんですけど、粗いと 豆に対してのまぶりつきが範囲が狭くなっちゃうので。
Teppei mixes Koji mold spores into the ground barley. Then, the steamed soybeans are hand-tossed with the barley and Koji powder. The mold produces enzymes that break down the proteins and starches in the beans and barley into amino acids and sugars. It's this natural fermentation process that gives artisanal Japanese soy sauce its dark color and distinct flavor.
機械に一度挑戦したところ、どうしても同じ味が出ないということが、試験的に分かりまして。
Kaori Okada is the current owner of Gamebishi. She's the 18th generation of her family to run this business. Gamebishi is one of the few breweries in the world that still uses the traditional Mushiro Koji method.
むしろの上に麹を並べて、3日3晩熱の番をして作るという方法です。
Workers monitor the temperature of the koji every hour during that time.
今日寝れないじゃないですか。
そうですね。一応明日の明けで、僕は仕事の方終わりなんで。
On the first day, Teppei heats the room to raise the koji's temperature.
上の方なんかは 0.5 度1度ずつぐらいですけど、12時に盛り込んだ時点より、温度が上がってきてます。
The goal in this step is to heat the koji to stimulate fermentation. By day 2, the fermentation should be so active that the koji generates its own heat.
今はもうストーブつけない状態でも、だいたい麹の温度が31とかもう。
As it grows, the koji gets so big it needs to be shaken off the mats, dumped to the floor, and remixed to make sure the beans don't stick to each other.
だから酵素の力が強いと分解力が強いので、当然うまい醤になるってことなんですよね。
The koji ages in these barrels where it will transform completely.
一応ここがもろみ蔵になるんですけど、
Moromi is the name of the paste-like mixture that will age into the finished soy sauce. It's a mixture of koji, salt, and water. Adding salt isn't just for flavor. Salt protects the koji from microorganisms and bacteria while it ages in cedarwood barrels.
仕込んだ後はやっぱり塩水と麹をなじますために、頻繁に攪拌は買い入れはしてやるんですけど、
But as it ages, they leave it alone, except for occasional stirring during the hotter months.
夏場はやっぱり表面に酵母っていうのが出てくるので、それは醤油にとってはあまり良くないものになってくるので、夏場は週に 3,4 回とかする時もあります。一応これが、先週仕込んだばかりの、麹になります。やっぱり、見てわかるように表面が、黄金色といいますか、黄色いっぽい色をしてます。古くなるとやっぱり酸化して色がついてくるので。
これちなみに今飛び込むと沈みます？それとも全然沈まないですか？こんくらいだと。
じっくり沈んでいくと思います。じんわり。
時からその酵素の力によって大豆のタンパク質が分解されてうまみになり、小麦のでんぷん質が分解されて糖になって。
Gamebishi ages all of its soy sauces. The longer they age, the more complex the flavors, and the more expensive the final product.
私どもは短い年数のものでも2年、長いものだと20年という。
Gamebishi even has plans for a 50-year aged soy sauce, which won't be ready until around 2032.
この中で一番古いもろみはこちらのもろみが、今だいたい41年なってますね。想像してもらいたいのは、バルサミコとかそういう醸造物に似てるんですけど、年数が経てば経つほど酸味が増してきますね。
But before the sauce can be bottled and sold, it first must be pressed. Mature moromi aged under 10 years is spread out on cloth and stacked into layers.
ノートにはこの作業をずっとやること、船かけをノドって言ってますけど。
Then a machine squeezes the soy sauce into a bucket below.
多分800リッターぐらいは今日だけでも絞れると思いますけどね。
But anything aged over 10 years is too dry to press this way.
1本作るのに、言ったら、1ヶ月以上かかるようなそういう商品です。塩ビのポールに、穴を先の方に開けまして、そこにガーゼをします。で、そこにこう牛乳瓶みたいな瓶を、下につけまして、いわゆるそれでこうバーッとこう押して中に埋めるんですね、瓶を。でその埋められた瓶が、浸透圧によってこうガーゼのところからホタホタって一滴ずつ。
The finished sauce is then heated up to stop the fermentation and to pasteurize it for bottling.
残念ながらもうお醤油は売れない、消費量はかなり低迷しております。
So when she took over from her sister in 2001, Gaori started innovating to bolster the historic company.
まずはその、粉のお醤油、洋食にも使えるようにということで、いわゆる芯を広げましょうということですね。
They even make pizza.
あとナポリからピザ窯を取り寄せまして、ここでピザを皆さんに振る舞うという醤油ピザを振る舞うということもやりましたし、
The company's roots are baked into its name.
亀さんとひしっていうのは、大変めでたい、アイテムですので、昔の多分岡田家の先祖が亀が好きだったというのもありますし、もともとは、4代目までは武士だったんですけれども、5代目の方が、1753年、醤油醸造業を始めたというふうに文献で読みました。なんといってももう日本で 3K と言われてもいいぐらいの、大変過酷な作業です。ですので今の若い人にとってはなかなか続けていくことは難しく、その同族で経営していくっていうことに対してはあまり、深く考えていませんで。
She felt similarly about her own foray into the business.
その16代目の彼から、私が自信がないということを彼に伝えましたところ、それなら閉めたらいいと、幕を閉じましょうということになったんですが、なんとかベストを尽くしてやってみようというところが、姉がいなくなってから、そこから奮起していろんな、資格を取り、勉強をして、今に至っております。
Inside this century-old tree hides pure grade A maple syrup, made exclusively from this sap with no added sugar. It's the purest form of maple syrup you can get, but it's extremely rare and time-consuming to make. To retrieve this liquid gold, Jeffrey needs to individually tap thousands of trees by hand and extract their sap slowly, drop by drop. It could take hours or even days for the sap to reach its final destination, and after that, about 10 hours to get 1 single gallon of syrup. Farms like this one in New York State's Hudson Valley then sell that gallon for over $200. That's almost 29 times more expensive than popular imitation syrup, which sells for $7. Despite the price, grade A maple syrup is incredibly sought after, so much so that $18 million of it was once stolen in one of the largest heists in Canadian history. But why is grade A maple syrup worth so much? And why is it so expensive?
I love very dark maple syrup. It's got these beautiful notes of like toffee and caramel. It's a little buttery, and it's got that really strong maple flavor, which I really like. I love it obviously on pancakes, on waffles, but it's really great too to slather on some ribs too. So adding that sweetness, that maple flavor.
The basics of making maple syrup are all the same. You boil sap, but from tree to like jug of syrup, there's a lot of different variables in that process that affect the taste as well.
Jeffrey and his wife, Ashley Ruprecht, have been making syrup for almost a decade. They produce limited batches of syrup that have been tapped, wood-fired, and bottled right here on their 50-plus acre farm in the Hudson Valley. Outside of Vermont, New York has the most tappable maple trees in the US.
Currently, we have around 1,200 trees, so we're not a huge farm. It's still manageable for my husband and I.
Though many may associate it with autumn, maple syrup is actually a product of spring. During the summer months, the maple tree absorbs energy from the sun as well as water and minerals from the soil. Starch is then created and stored in the roots through the winter. In spring, as the snow begins to melt, the starch turns to sugar or sucrose and circulates throughout the tree. And it's the ideal time for Jeffrey to tap. While most of the trees are sugar maples, they also pull sap from other types.
Really, sugar maples are the predominant species that are tapped. Just because the sugar content in the sap itself is so high, I would say 25 to 30% red maples we tap, and then the rest are sugar maples.
To be tapped, a maple tree needs to reach at least 40 years old, but they can live for up to 400 years, and if tapped properly, producers like Jeffrey can reuse the same tree for decades.
There's no harm to the tree. You want to tap where there's not any like major like large knots or flaws or anything above. Like good crowns, good diameter of the tree, healthy tree, no rotten spots and stuff like that. So this is a really good spot. And when tapping, it's super important to go as quick as possible in and out, make sure like all the wood comes out. And you have a clear tap hole that's nice and round, you're good to go.
For Jeffrey to collect the sap, a couple of factors need to be just right. The sap is ready when the temperature is above freezing during the day and below freezing at night. Wind can also affect the flow of the sap.
Today is a really good day. We had a nice hard freeze last night and it's warm today, so that pressure in the tree is really pushing sap out, so it's a really, really good day.
Jeffrey drives a spout 1.5 to 2.5 inches deep into a hole 5/16 of an inch wide. He then fits every tree with a tube like this one. In Jeffrey's and Ashley's forest, lines of tubes transport sap to a sugar house for processing. In the US, there are 3 grades of maple syrup: substandard, processing grade, and the highest quality, Grade A. To be sold as Grade A, it needs to contain no more than 68.9% solids, have a consistent colour, and contain no sediment. In comparison, cheap commercial table syrup can contain anything from artificial colourings to harmful chemicals.
So table syrup, that is actually not maple syrup. It's usually corn syrup or cane syrup, maybe a little bit of maple flavoring added to it because it's not from a maple tree at all.
For Grade A, the time of year also affects the quality of the syrup. The earlier in the season it's harvested, the lighter the syrup.
It's all the same process to produce these colors. It's the sap that changes throughout the season that actually changes the color and the taste of the syrup. Usually we'll start out with a lighter syrup, a golden, an amber, and you usually end on very dark syrup at the end of the season.
Today, Ashley and Jeffrey will likely harvest Grade A very dark.
It's the darkest color that we produce as well, which has the strongest maple flavor, and that is really popular for us here.
On the market, these factors are reflected in the price, with Jeffrey and Ashley's premium syrups going for a little over $200 per gallon. Premium syrups are so valuable that between 2011 and 2012, 6 million gallons worth over $14 million were stolen from producers in the Canadian province of Quebec, the world's largest supplier of maple syrup. The heist was so large that it affected the global supply. It remains to this day the most valuable heist in Canadian history, known as the Great Maple Syrup Heist. In the US, table syrup is still the first choice, with 75% of consumers preferring it over pure maple syrup. But here in the Hudson Valley, premium syrup like Jeffrey and Ashley's has no equals.
I grew up in the 5th generation restaurateurs in the Hudson Valley. There is more of an increase in the demand for the maple syrup. I find that it's drawing an influx of people and an attention to the Hudson Valley. I think that the usage of both the red maple and the sugar maple trees does have a little bit more of a well-rounded flavor to it. I typically use the dark maple syrup, being kind of a middle of the road. It has an excellent flavor profile that does pair well with sweet dishes, savory dishes. You just simply can't get that same flavor profile or balance from honey or any other type of sweeteners. The maple, almost that oaky type flavor does carry through with it and balances very well. Grade A, I find, suits very well for multiple applications.
Back at the farm, Jeffrey and Ashley get ready to begin evaporating and filtering the freshly drawn sap. To get the sap up the evaporator in the sugar house, it first needs to reach this building, the sap house. With the help of a vacuum, the network of tubes carries it to a giant stainless steel collection tank.
The first point of entry gets pulled into this big bin, and we have pumps going all the way up to our sugar house up there, which pushes sap up into there, and that's where we evaporate.
It's pumped up to the sugar house to a larger holding tank. This is where filtration and evaporation begin. Ashley and Jeffrey's farm runs on a wood evaporator.
We boil as hot as we can get our firebox. We are testing it constantly. You're measuring the Brix of the syrup, which is basically the viscosity of the syrup, making sure it gets to the correct density.
When it's pulled from the tree and before reaching the evaporator, sap contains 98% water and 2% sugar. By the time it evaporates, it should be ready at 33% water and 67% sugar. Precision is key here. Jeffrey needs to make sure the syrup reaches exactly 68.9% density.
We'll just boil away most of the water content from the sap until it reaches the perfect maple syrup consistency. Because once you evaporate too much of the water content out of the sap, it goes from syrup to like a candy to a sugar.
Many farms today, especially larger ones, tend to use oil-powered evaporators. Neither method affects the taste of the syrup, but the wooden evaporator is more labor-intensive, which is another factor that drives up the price.
We do have a lot of storms that come through, so a lot of the trees that do fall, we use the firebox to evaporate.
From sap to finished syrup, Jeffrey and Ashley have to be mindful of the entire process.
Trees can fall on your main line. You can have a pretty catastrophic day if that happens. All of your syrup is just pouring out of your main line. You definitely have to be paying attention unless you have a lot of automated systems going, and even then sometimes things happen.
But there is one thing that can't be controlled: the weather. Recently, warming temperatures and changes in freeze and thaw cycles have affected maple trees and syrup production and the quality of Ashley and Jeffrey's products.
We've seen a change even in just these few years. Long periods of freezing in the middle of the season are really hard because you could have 2 weeks where it's a really hard freeze and sap is not flowing, and then a few weeks later it's really warm and the trees just stop producing sap. So the seasons have become shorter, but we're also seeing every year we're tapping a little earlier and seeing sap flows a little earlier too. So the season might be moving a little earlier as well and ending earlier too.
Despite the challenges, maple syrup farms like Ashley and Jeffries in New York continue to thrive.
We're a great support system for each other, and it's always nice to walk out your back door and be in your Sugarwoods and business.
To make sake, you need a lot of rice. Brewers polish rice into pristine, pearl-like grains and combine it with koji mold to craft the perfect flavour. You can buy a bottle of sake for less than $10, but the most expensive version of the highest grade, called Junmai Daiginjo, can cost almost $10,000. Sake requires just 4 ingredients, but without careful attention, the brew can be ruined at any stage. At Niizawa Brewery, Nanami Watanabe observes the entire process. She's one of the youngest brewmasters in Japan.
結局その短大生だったので、就職を決めたタイミングではお酒を飲める年じゃなかったんですね。
Despite her age, her sake has already won several awards.
人によってはその正解がないことにストレスを感じてしまう方もいるとは思うんですけど、やっぱりその美味しいにゴールがないのは私は面白いなと思っています。
We spent a day with Nanami to discover how she brews sake and to learn about what makes Junmai Daiginjo so expensive. It's a quiet morning in the mountain town of Kawasaki in Japan's Miyagi Prefecture. But inside the brewery, the hustle has already begun.
そうですね、朝帯の子たちは割と5時から来て、ただ5時から来たら昼の12時には終わりなので、お酒作りは一人では絶対できないので、私が全部決めていくっていうことも、一つその方向性を決める上では大事だと思うんですけれども、やっぱりその働きがいだったりとかやりがいの部分にもつながってくるので。
例えばご自分のことすごい勉強家だと思いますか？
いえ、全然。どちらかというと早く帰りたいしできればやっぱりこうなんて言うんでしょう、あんまりいっぱい働きたくないので美味しくするためにはここは手を抜いてはいけない、ここはしっかり毎日やらなきゃいけないっていうこともあるので、勤勉ではないんですけど、やっぱりその目的が割とはっきりしてるかなとは思います。
Sake is categorized by its ingredients and the degree of rice polishing, also referred to as the rice polishing ratio. To be considered Junmai Daiginjo, at least 50% of the grain must be removed through polishing. The more polished the rice, the longer the sake takes to make, and the more expensive the final product. The brewery uses around 12 metric tons of unpolished rice per week. To polish rice, brewers run it through mills that remove the sides of the grain, which contain proteins and fats.
皮の中で石がコロコロ磨いてくるくる回っていくように、ですから外側が入った時の味わいと中側だけの味わいっていうのが全く違うんです。なので目的の味とするために磨いた方がいいのか磨かない方がいいのか。
Compared to the umami flavor of sake made from less polished rice, more polishing generally means a cleaner taste and a more expensive price point. But before it can be fermented, it has to be washed and steamed.
お米にどのくらい水分を吸わせるかによって、お米のその蒸し上がりの硬さが決まってくるんですね。お米の周りについている、お米の粉ですね、ぬかをしっかり落としてあげないと栄養分が多すぎてその目的のお酒にならなかったりとかしてしまうので、結構後味すっきり軽めの仕上がりにしたいので。
Workers move quickly because every moment counts when washing rice.
その時間だったりお米の状態を見ながら水分量を決めていくのは結構大切な工程になります。もともと13分くらいで吸水させるっていう目安をしてたんですけれど、今日の白米の状態から吸水の状態を見て、ちょっと吸うのが早かったので、じゃあ10分くらい10分ちょっとだけども開けようかっていうので今水を流した感じですね。
Now it's time to steam the rice that workers washed yesterday.
うちの蔵だと1トンから 1.3 トンくらいの仕込みが多いです。
Steaming takes around 40 to 45 minutes, and just like washing, it requires close attention.
釜ごとにやっぱり水分入る水分だったり、その張り込む順番の下の方だけ水分よく吸う釜だったりとか、その機材の癖みたいなのがやっぱりどうしてもあると思うので、もう少し経つと真ん中からバーッと蒸気が抜けて布が膨らんでる状態になるのが見れると思います。
お酒造りは全てがその判断の連続で、だからこその杜氏の腕なんです。
For Iwao, promoting Nanami to brewmaster at a young age wasn't much of a risk.
彼女を22歳の時に杜氏にしようと思ったのかというのは、一番はやっぱり利き酒能力。彼女と僕の利き酒のレベルが一緒だった。これはちょっとショックでした。で、あとは認めなくてはいけないことでした。
Nanami has been working at this brewery for 7 years.
そういう文化があるっていうことも知らないまま入社を決めてしまったところはあったんですけど、本当に皆さんよく知ってくださって、なんかちょっと言い方合ってるかわからないんですけど、失敗しやすい環境かなとは思います。
It takes roughly 2 kilos of rice to make a 1.8 litre bottle of sake. Many different types of rice can be used, which affect the taste and the price. Niizawa Brewery sources most of its rice locally.
大きく影響します。ただ飲んでこの米だということはわからないんですよね。ちょっと余談なんですけど、よくお酒を飲んでこれはこの米を使ってるなんていうシーンがあるんですが、飲んではわからないです。
While ordinary Junmai Daiginjo sake uses rice polished to at least 50%, Niizawa's most expensive sake is polished to less than 1%.
でもちろん磨いたお米の 99% も、家畜の餌、あと米油の原料、あとおせんべいの原料 100% 使うんですね。なので産廃物が出ないというのがこの日本酒の製造の伝統産業のいいところであります。
Polishing rice to 50% takes around 3 days, but to get to 1%, it takes over 200 days. The process requires more rice and slower, more careful polishing. Niizawa makes around 1,000 bottles of this type of sake each year, and Iwao says they always sell out.
まあ普通お料理でもお酒でもプロなので、だいたい味の想像ってつくんですが、その想像を軽く超えていきます。
But polishing is just the beginning. Once the rice is steamed, it's time to add the most important ingredient: Koji mold spores. Koji is a type of mold that grows on steamed rice. As the spores grow, they convert the starches in the rice into sugars. But workers have to move quickly to maintain the correct temperature and humidity. They feel for warm and cold areas of the rice and move clumps around to keep the temperature even.
繁殖していく人数が増えていくので、発酵熱、熱を持ち始めるんですね。日本酒作りの麹、いい麹を作るには40度から 43度くらい、45度までいっちゃうとちょっとあれなので、やっぱり対生き物なので絶対に自分が思った通りにいかないところですかね。その都度その都度のやっぱり気づきとそれに対しての対応力が試される毎日っていうのが、しかもそれが正解かどうかはわからないんです、口に入るまでっていうのが面白みでもあり大変さというか難しさでもあるのかなと思っています。失敗をやっぱり笑い話にできるまでが失敗。
Once the koji is ready, Nanami combines everything in large fermentation tanks.
お酒を作る際の原材料は、お米と、お水とあと菌2種類ですね。麹菌と酵母菌です。ワインだったりビールだったりとかはその1種類の菌が働き終わってから次の菌が働いたりとかするんですけど、日本酒の場合は2つの菌が同時に、働いてスタートするっていうのが。
Koji turns starches into sugars, and the yeast converts those sugars into alcohol. This process is called multiple parallel fermentation. It's what makes sake unique. It's also what makes brewing it so challenging. Nanami monitors this liquid, called mash, every day for a month. There's a lot of anticipation waiting to taste the sake. She takes samples and uses sensors to track the fermentation.
どういうアプローチをするといいのかっていうのを経過を見ながら考えて、例えば濃すぎる数字が出てしまっているもろみに関しては水を少し足してあげた方が酵母が生きやすくなるというか、やっぱり微生物も今になってもやっぱ予想外の動きをしたり逆に助けてもらったりとか、そういうことは結構あります。
After it ferments, the mash is pressed and bottled as sake. But no matter the price of the bottle, Nanami ensures every sip is delicious.
私が自分で作ったというか自分の製品をやっぱりどこで飲んでも美味しくあってほしいなっていう気持ちはあって、良いものを作りたいというよりは飲んだ時にやっぱ美味しくあってほしいっていう気持ちが強いので。
For Nanami, training her palate is just as important as honing her brewing skills. After work, she often tastes sake from other breweries.
会社で嗅ぐ匂いだったり会社で利き酒するのはもうなんていうか仕事の側面が結構やっぱり大きいので、割と緊張感を持ってというか、ご飲食店さんだったりとか自宅で飲むのとはやっぱ違いますね。
Nanami ordered 9 kinds of sake, but she doesn't know which is which.
ちょっと一番最初なので、まず全体的な香りを見ながら似てるものだったりとかそういうのを仕分けをしながら今口慣らしをしたような感じです。結構人によりけりで飲んじゃう子は全部飲むし、お料理を食べながらまた飲んでいったり、あとはお酒の温度が上がってくると感じ方が変わってくるので、それも加味しながらなんでしょう、普通に飲んだり食べたりしながら評価をしていって、ちょっと甘さが強かったりとかちょっと麹の香りが強かったりとか、そういうものが何とか。
Despite sake's legacy in Japan, Nanami says it isn't always a drink of choice for people her age.
すごい好きで飲む子か、逆にもう全然飲まない子か、みんなに飲んでほしいというよりは割となんでしょう、美味しく飲んでほしいって気持ちが強いかもしれないです。苦手な人に無理に飲んでほしいとも思わないですし、美味しいなって思ってもらえる人にやっぱ 飲んでほしい。でもそういう人たちってやっぱりこうファンって厳しいじゃないですか。厳しい目線で見て、いやでもやっぱり美味しいよって言ってもらえるのがやっぱ一番の褒め言葉なのかなと思います。
Tasting sake in a restaurant while eating allows Nanami to experience it the same way a customer would.
やっぱりお腹いっぱいになってくると、こうさっきはこう渋いというか、ちょっと糖分少なめだなって感じてた子たちが割とその軽やかというか、口の中の油だったり甘さを流してくれるので、評価がこうちょっとずつ上がってきたりとか。
Now it's time to check how many she got right.
ありがとうございます。なるほど。だいたい当たったんですけど、1個逆にしました。やっぱりその口当たりの滑らかさというかスムースさみたいなのはやっぱりこう自分の蔵はあるなっていうのをすごく感じました。勉強に対しての新沢のその投資能力というかが結構高いので、自己研鑽に対してのそのチャレンジに対してすごくそのしやすい環境、しやすい職場だったかなとは思います。
Niizawa Brewery has been around for 150 years. Iwao Niizawa is the fifth generation to run it.
100年、200年、300年続く蔵がたくさんあるので、もちろんいい時ばかりじゃありません。
At the age of 25, Iwao became a brewmaster. He dedicated himself to improving the quality of the sake and the brewery's sales. But in 2011, disaster struck. A magnitude 9 earthquake and the resulting tsunami devastated the northeastern coast of Japan.
結局は蔵は全壊をしまして、自分が住んでいる家もすべて全壊になりました。酒蔵に勤めている蔵人の家族も流されたり、すべてを失った時間でした。外から来てくれた酒蔵はお酒造りをこうし始めてくれました。その勢いに僕らは乗って、少しずつ元気が湧いてきました。明日、お米をふかすんだよと、お米を磨くんだよ、なんとなく少しずつこう前に踏み出せた。
Since rebuilding, Niizawa has won numerous awards for its sake, and Iwao has passed the role of brewmaster to Nanami.
これから利き酒能力が上がる人間と利き酒能力が落ちる人間が同点だった場合、早く判断しなければいけないと。
そうですね、まあそう思ってもらえたのは素直にありがたいかなと思います。でもなんか社長よりできるようになるかって言われるとちょっと分かんないですね。頑張ります。
This is a golden kiwi, a unique strain of kiwi fruit developed through crossbreeding to be sweeter and softer than a normal green kiwi.
Green's old school. Green is big, brown, very different sorts of shapes. Gold just looks slicker. It's a different, more subtle palate, sweeter, and it's a more consistent piece of fruit.
Even though they're smaller, golden kiwis cost almost twice as much as green kiwis. In fact, they're so valuable that some sprouts have been smuggled out of New Zealand and sold in lots for 60,000 New Zealand dollars. That's because this specific kiwi can't be grown without permission from its copyright holder, Zespri. Unless you want to be sued and ordered to pay $14 million, like one international smuggler was, growing golden kiwis is so lucrative that it's caused a feud between New Zealand and China, where the fruit is native. But how do you copyright a fruit? And what exactly makes these kiwis so expensive?
It's a very easy fruit to eat. It's very soft, you know, without being squashy or squishy. It's got the hints of melon with it, with the kiwi fruit. Look, it's a beautiful tasting fruit. It really is.
While green kiwis have a thick, hairy skin that provides a protective layer, golden kiwis are completely hairless and much more easily damaged. Here at Wiroa Orchard, located in Kerikeri in the heart of Northland, New Zealand, golden kiwis are carefully harvested with gloved hands. This drives up labour costs.
It's a very easy fruit to pick, but you must take a lot of care not to damage it. We have teams of pickers that have picking bags and wear gloves on their hands so that they don't damage the fruit with their fingernails. And it's all done by hand by snapping the fruit off and putting it into a bag, and then the bags are emptied into bins. A team of 15 pickers, when they're doing well, they would be filling a bin roughly every 3 to 4 minutes.
But before Peter and his team are even allowed to harvest, a sample from the orchard must meet certain criteria.
Taste is one, number of seeds, or the colour of the seeds, the blackness of the seeds. You can't just have 1 or 2 or 3 out of the 5 pass, or whatever it is. You must pass on all of them.
This is because this particular variety of golden kiwi, called Sungold, is controlled by Zespri, a cooperative of kiwi fruit growers in New Zealand. Zespri created Sungold by crossbreeding different yellow kiwis.
Within 2 years, it was a delicious, large, golden globe, and it was just the perfect piece of fruit.
And it was this perfected strain that helped New Zealand rebuild its kiwi industry. In 2010, disease nearly wiped out most of the country's kiwi orchards, causing $900 million worth of damage. But one newly developed kiwi strain resisted infection, Zespri's Sungold. Sungold quickly became popular for its consistently sweet taste and has proved more profitable than its green counterpart. Fast forward to today, and this perfected strain makes up about 67% or $1.9 billion of New Zealand's kiwi export value. But not just anyone can grow these kiwis. Zespri only releases a certain number of licenses every year, and growers bid on them. In 2022, the median price for a Sungold license hit $801,000 per hectare.
We have IP protections around who's able to grow it and who shouldn't be growing it. And gold kiwi fruit it's a handcrafted product. Yeah, we grow it in nature, but so many hours go into it. They get touched so much, and whether it be fertilisation, pruning, tying down the fruiting wood, thinning flowers, it just needs so much attention.
But golden kiwis weren't always this perfect. When they first hit New Zealand's produce market 10 years ago, the fruits looked and tasted a lot different.
That fruit was disgusting. And they were these small, hard bullets. It was right at the start of when we'd started growing it on scale as a country. And like all new bits of fruit, you need to figure out how to grow it.
Today, it can take 5 years before a new Sungold kiwi orchard is ready for harvest. Joshua Murphy is in charge of planting golden kiwis here at Wiroa Orchard, one of the largest commercial orchards in the region. The orchard contains about 72 hectares of gold kiwis. It's on Joshua to strategically cultivate vines that will bear high-quality fruit for the next 30 to 50 years.
It's not just a kind of we chuck the plant in the ground and it grows a million fruit that big, no, there's actually a lot of selection. If we overcrop it too much, we'll get a bunch of fruit like that aren't going to sell. So we have to select how many canes we put into the canopy in the winter pruning.
Starting in June, during New Zealand's wintertime, Joshua begins pruning the vines and training its canes or branches to grow on a trellis and eventually form a canopy.
Yeah, so this system that I'm doing here with the poles and the strings, again, it's based on a science because these canes will grow quicker and longer and stronger growing on that direction rather than just letting them flap in the wind.
Training the vines to grow upward also forces the plants to store more sugar at the top, resulting in sweeter kiwis.
I think it's quite nice. It's My partner, she says it's like a mix between a kiwi fruit and a tamarillo. Yeah, they're more of a designer fruit, if that makes any sense. The green ones are quite nice too, but the gold ones have just got that extra bit in them. I'll eat a few each season, but I won't, I don't indulge myself in them too much now. I make desserts out of them.
A golden kiwi orchard typically needs more hands on deck because of its large size. Since golden kiwi vines produce less fruit, the orchards are usually larger than those for green kiwis. A typical green kiwi orchard might have 12,000 to 14,000 trees per hectare. Meanwhile, a golden kiwi orchard needs 16,000 to 18,000 trees per hectare to produce enough fruit to make it worth it for farmers.
So the work I'm doing now on this plant here gets done on about 80,000 plants in this orchard. And this is just the very initial stage of setting up the leaders.
Joshua strategically trims the vines to produce these perfectly sweet golden kiwis. Depending on the amount of growth, it takes him anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes per plant. Thinning out the vines by hand allows him to target canes that have started to produce misshapen fruit. Doing this also raises labour costs, since all the thinning must be done by an experienced hand.
Most people, I'd say, that are overseas that are buying a kiwi fruit, they probably think it comes from a tree. You know, they probably think someone's just planted a tree. I don't think a lot of people actually understand how much labour and work goes into creating the product that they're eating.
After the kiwis are harvested, every kiwi is carefully inspected.
Consumers don't want to go one day in the supermarket looking for their gold kiwi fruit and find that it's not there anymore, or that it tastes slightly different, or the quality's not as good. No one likes a blemish, and it's in some ways a bit sad because it still tastes just as nice. But premium fruit needs to look perfect, and gold kiwi fruit is pretty unforgiving because it's such a smooth, round piece of fruit. It looks beautiful. Any mark on it, you can notice it.
Shipping from New Zealand to most countries is already quite expensive due to the distance.
And not many ships come down here. There isn't that much going on down in Aotearoa, New Zealand that you need a big container ship for outside of horticulture and dairy and meat. Therefore, the cost of shipping it's pretty expensive when it comes to the contribution that cost to the price of a piece of fruit.
Luckily though, golden kiwis don't expire quickly, another quality that sets them apart from green kiwis. Zespri says that while a ripe green kiwi lasts up to 5 days, a golden kiwi can last up to 7. The grower-owned co-op is the main exporter of New Zealand's kiwi fruits. Today, the island country controls 30% of the global kiwi supply.
In a way, Zespri's coordinating all those efforts of New Zealand kiwi fruit growers into a coordinated breeding program, and it's one of the larger breeding programs in the world when it comes to horticulture. And as a result, we get these beautiful pieces of fruit. But it is a lot of work to get to that end point of a beautiful piece of gold kiwi fruit in the supermarket.
However, after a kiwi grower successfully smuggled sun gold sprouts overseas, a number of illegal orchards popped up in China. Zespri has attempted to regain control of its golden kiwi strain, but it may be too late. The smuggler was fined for $14 million in damages, but since then, the unauthorized sun gold orchards have doubled in size. Ironically, kiwis originated in China, where they're known as gooseberries. While other countries struggled to commercialize the gooseberry, New Zealand's humid climate has made it ideal for cultivating and perfecting this unique fruit. And now, New Zealand's golden kiwis are still the, well, gold standard. This massive 50-kilogram Nile perch is a rare catch for these Ugandan fishers. But it's not the fish meat that'll make them the most money. It's this balloon-like internal organ known as a fish maw or a swim bladder. Dried fish maws can sell for up to $800 a pound, but older maws like this one from a large slate cod croaker are valued as high as $4,000 for a single piece.
Wegamba esinga obaka nga mene pizza tejja naye kati yafuuka gold kyobola lwaki sigiriya.
Fishers sell it to Chinese markets around the world where people eat it for its health benefits and supposed anti-aging properties. But the supply chain in China is facing a big problem. Due to overfishing in Chinese waters, connoisseurs are now looking abroad to places like Uganda for fish maw. The organ is so prized that smuggling and theft are rampant in the industry. So why is fishing for maw worth the risk? And why is it so expensive? Po Wing Hong Food Market in New York City's Chinatown has been selling fish maw ever since it first opened in 1980. Today it specialises in rare dried seafood delicacies. Sophia Tsao runs this shop with her parents. She says that these days fish maw is so rare that they have to buy it in bulk as soon as it becomes available.
Usually we request a certain size and certain type of fish maw because we know what sells the best, and we usually maybe get 50% of what we request because the demand is so high.
Fish maw, or swim bladder, is an organ that enables fish to control their buoyancy. Fish maw is traditionally considered one of the 4 treasures of Cantonese cuisine, along with shark fin, abalone, and sea cucumber. Zhao Xiong, who has worked for Po Wing Hong for 10 years, supervises the dried seafood department. He's an expert on the 4 treasures.
係非洲嘅淡水鱸魚膠嚟嘅，一般嘅花膠咧係稍微有一種偏黃，跟住咧佢係有一種非常之半透明嘅咁樣一種狀態喺度，所以咧佢嘅年份咧越耐咧佢嘅花膠係越厚。 跟住咧，佢所含嘅膠原同埋蛋白質咧係非常之豐富，同埋咧佢所含咧各種嘅微生物咧、磷咧、鈣咧呢啲微生物特別豐富啲。
The store orders all of its fish maw from a USDA certified broker who works directly with traders and fishers in Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa.
Usually when we order fish maw, it's about 30 to 50 pounds per case, and general prices are between 4,000 to 8,000 depending on the quality of the fish maw.
They resell it for anywhere from $200 to $800 per pound, depending on the type and quality. The Chinese bahaba, or large yellow croaker, was a main source of fish maw for decades. But in 1989, the Chinese government designated it a Grade 2 state-protected species. And in 2006, the International Union for Conservation of Nature also assessed the fish as critically endangered. Today, the majority of fish maw is imported from other countries, including Uganda, where fishing for an invasive species called Nile perch on Lake Victoria has become a lucrative business for locals like Amber Francis. It's early morning on Kisima One Island in Jinja. Amber is packing up his bait and hooks and preparing his boat to set out on Lake Victoria. He's worked as a fisher here for the past 10 years. He says Nile perch sold for much cheaper when he first started, before there was demand for the bladders. The islands in the area around Jinja, like Kisima, are used as a base for the estimated 2,000 or so fishers in the area. While Ugandans don't typically eat fish maw themselves, Amber has tried it and loves it.
Yeah, we used to eat it and we enjoyed it a lot. Other people sometime back they used to throw them away. Not until they came to realize that it's tasty, it's good. That's when they started to consume it.
Amber says he can make around $4,000 a month selling fish maw to traders, depending on the size of his catch.
Each kilo, they can buy it at 25,000, only a kilo. When I get that one, which weighs like 10 kilograms, that's 250, which is a lot of money in Uganda.
But finding the biggest fish requires some special tricks and knowing where to look.
The weather right now is good for fishing, but in 2 to 3 hours, actually, the water will be rough.
He focuses on the deep water, and he baits his hooks with a live young catfish, known locally as ensuma. If the water is too cold, the ensuma can die instantly, and Nile perch won't go after dead fish. Each hook is demarcated with a bottle, so he knows which lines belong to him. Because these fish are so valuable, theft is also an issue on the lake.
Unfortunately, you go there, you find nothing, when everything was taken by those thieves. Yeah.
Once he's baited his lines, he leaves them in the water and returns to the island to rest until evening.
Now we are going to rest for some time, like 3 to 4 hours. After, we come back and check our hooks, what we have put there, to see whether there's null patch on it.
Amber says he typically catches 6 or 7 fish per day, usually all weighing under 20 kilograms. The biggest one he has ever caught was a massive 98 kilograms.
I feel good when it pulls me. Yeah, actually I enjoy it. It's like a game to me.
Today he caught only 6 fish, but the biggest one was about 30 kilograms.
Expected to go to get more than this. Yeah, actually it's a bad day to me.
The fishers don't remove the bladders themselves. Tomorrow, Amber will sell his fish directly to the trader, who hired him at the local market in Masese. Amber's boss is Hakeem Magumba, who has been working in the fishing industry for about 23 years. He previously traded tilapia to buyers in Kenya, but he now works with Nile perch because it's much more profitable.
Because I fish because I need fish more. Because fish more is like gold from my side. You understand? We used to throw it back. We used to throw the bladder because it was no sense. We wanted that meat, but nowadays, money.
Hakeem says he has 22 boats and 30 fishers like Amber working for him. Once they deliver the fish to him, they are weighed, sorted and priced based on their size.
This fish weighs 12 kilos. After weighing, we are going to cut it and see the bladder which is in it.
The bladders must be removed and cleaned by hand.
We sell it at the 500,000 Ugandan shillings.
The rest of the fish doesn't go to waste. Hakeem sells it to the locals in Uganda, where it's a popular delicacy. The more will eventually make its way to Chinese exporters who dry it and ship it to Hong Kong and other locations worldwide. Hakeem is just one of many traders in the area trying to make a living in Fishmore with competitors all around him.
We have like people from Kenya, people from TZ, their own competitors. Very many. Very many.
Aside from the competition, Hakeem says one of the biggest challenges the fishers in Uganda face is run-ins with local authorities.
The guys who are in business of fishing, they don't have the license. So when you don't have license, you are caught with the soldiers.
Crime is also an issue on land, according to Hakeem. He says some of his colleagues have been robbed while transporting their goods to Chinese buyers.
Theft is too much. Mostly on the roads when you're taking it to the Chinese.
And getting into the industry is costly. Not everyone can afford the initial investment of equipment, which includes a government-licensed boat, an engine, plus regulation hooks and bait.
Yeah, actually it requires a lot of capital, yeah, to deal in fishing Nile perch. Like me as a fisherman, just one boat I require like 15 million shillings.
Overfishing has already been detrimental to many fish species around the world. A large croaker in Mexico's Gulf of California called the totoaba is now in danger of extinction due to the fishmore trade. But this fish, often dubbed the cocaine of the sea, is still illegally trafficked into China. In April 2023, US Customs seized $2.7 million worth of totoaba fishmore hidden in a shipment of frozen fish fillets in Arizona. Even so, demand for fishmore is not slowing down. On a weekday morning at Po Wing Hong, the aisles are as busy as ever, with customers scouring the shelves for dried seafood products as soon as they open. While Fishmore is more popular among the older generations, Sophia says younger people have started incorporating it into their diets as well.
I feel that nowadays a lot of younger people are eating fish maw because it reminds them of dishes that they have in the past, and it's a little bit of nostalgia. Also, they want to embrace their culture and relearn the dishes that are really traditional.
And that rare $4,000 fish maw they have on hand, it's so special to Po Wing Hong that it's not even for sale.
We keep it just as a keepsake. We just have it as part of our collection.
The first thing you notice about this asparagus is its colour. But that's only the beginning. White asparagus has a much thicker stalk than the common green variety. And
the white ones, they're a little bit sweeter and juicier.
Aficionados refer to this vegetable as white gold, and they're willing to pay 3 times more for it than green asparagus because of its distinct flavour.
I have clients calling me starting in January. When is the asparagus coming?
But since white asparagus and green asparagus are the exact same plant, growing the perfect colourless stalk to fetch the highest price requires special preparation, specialised tools, and a race against the sun. So what exactly does it take to turn asparagus white, and why is it so expensive?
I'm the Spargel king. That's all I need. There's nothing else I need for lunch or dinner.
Erwin Schröttner is the head chef at Café Katja in New York City, one of the few places outside Europe that serves Spargel, or white asparagus. The restaurant offers a special menu every spring.
Oh, look at this. Those are the asparagus, what I'm looking forward. They're as thick as my hand. Even though we are at the end of the season this year, the asparagus is still amazing. Do you hear that crack? It's just gorgeous.
Since white asparagus predominantly grows in Central and Western European countries like Germany, Austria, and France, Erwin must import all the white asparagus he serves in his restaurant. And it's not cheap. Very early in the spring, a case can cost as much as $25 per pound, according to Erwin.
I can't do it, I can't touch it at that price. I do have to wait until it comes down a little bit too. Otherwise I have to charge $100 for a dish.
Because of the high import price, he charges anywhere from $24 for a small sampler portion to $46 for a main asparagus dish with a side of roast duck. He says he goes through anywhere from 120 to 180 white asparagus stalks per day. By mid-June, he's already down to his very last case.
And here you can see a case of beautiful, beautiful large asparagus. I just love when I see this. So far this year, this was 11 pounds in a case. I have done 180 cases.
The reason chefs like Erwin are willing to pay such high prices for white asparagus goes back to the laborious and time-intensive process it takes to grow it on specialised farms like this one in Belitz, Germany. It's Spargel season. For just 3 months a year, the delicacy draws crowds from all over the country for food and festivities. White asparagus thrives in loose, sandy soil, like the type found around Belitz.
Weil er dann zügig wächst und auch leicht süßlich schmeckt. Und das haben wir hier gerade in Belitz so. Deshalb ist auch der Belitzer Spargel so beliebt. Man kann Spargel auch auf anderen Böden anziehen. Das Problem ist nur, wenn der auf Ton- oder Lehmböden gezogen wird, dann kann der Spargel langsamer wachsen, kann bitterer werden, mehr Bitterstoff entwickeln.
Jürgen Jacobs and his brother Josef harvest about 1.5 million kilograms of asparagus per year on their 618 acres of farmland. Although they do grow green asparagus, over 90% of their crop is the more valuable white variety. Since green asparagus and white asparagus are actually the same plant, the colour it will become depends entirely on how it's raised. Once an asparagus stalk pops out of the ground, it's exposed to the sun and produces chlorophyll. The tip will initially turn slightly purple and then green with more exposure. The trick to keeping it white is letting the plant grow as large as possible underground. Then, once it emerges from the earth, farmers must harvest it before it has a chance to turn green. To accomplish this, they build mounds of dirt around the asparagus and then cover the rows of crops in these foil tarps. The foil reflects the sunlight away from the plant and helps prevent the coloration of the stalks. It also helps maintain the temperature of the plants underground, which means that Jürgen's farm can control the asparagus yield based on current demand and weather.
Und das heißt, wir können über dieses Foliensystem ein Managementsystem installieren, die Spargelernte steuern und sagen, wir wollen jetzt mehr Spargel, drehen wir die schwarze Seite nach außen, wir wollen weniger Spargel, drehen wir die weiße Seite nach außen und können damit den Markt auch ein bisschen regulieren, dass wir nicht Angebot haben, wenn keine Nachfrage da ist, oder kein Angebot haben, wenn die Nachfrage fulminant ist.
And demand soars in the spring. The official asparagus season starts in mid-April and ends around June 24th, the feast day of St. John the Baptist. And the strict June cut-off date is crucial to the future of the crop.
Das ist jedes Jahr der gleiche Termin, weil der Spargel ansonsten, wenn er weiter geerntet würde, würde die Staude, aus der der Spargel herauswächst, im Grunde eingehen. Sie würde Kraft verlieren.
Each asparagus stem produces about 15 shoots over the course of 3 months. Since asparagus is a perennial crop, the same plant will continue to produce stalks for 8 to 10 years. Once the white asparagus heads appear through the mound, each stalk is removed carefully, one at a time, using a special asparagus knife called a Spargelstecher. The trick is to put 2 fingers into the soil to find the stalk, insert the knife and pluck it at just the right spot so you don't destroy the crown or roots. While much of the harvesting is done by hand, Jürgen says the farm has automated some of the processes over time to increase production.
Ja, Spargelstechen ist halt vorwiegend ein sehr manueller Arbeitsvorgang. Die Arbeitsutensilien sind relativ einfach, das Stechmesser und theoretisch ein Spargelkorb, so war das früher.
Today, instead of the asparagus basket, there are harvesting aids. The harvesting aids drive battery-powered over the field.
Und wir haben früher, sag ich mal so, hat ein guter Stecher 60, 80 Kilo am Tag Spargel geerntet. Heute erntet ein guter Spargelstecher durchschnittlich 240 Kilo am Tag.
The harvested asparagus is immediately brought inside for cleaning and sorting. And speed is crucial, since white asparagus will begin to spoil only about 10 days after harvesting.
Nachdem der Spargel gestochen wurde, muss er relativ zeitnah, das heißt möglichst innerhalb der nächsten 2 Stunden, sofort auf den Hof verbracht werden. Er muss relativ schnell runtergekühlt werden, er wird gewaschen, damit die Schmutzanhaftungen, die aus dem Feld sind.
Workers sort the asparagus by quality. The most expensive Spargel is pure white, perfectly straight and thick. But some might have purple colour to them, a thinner stalk, or a curved shape, which can decrease the price by several euros. Any asparagus that doesn't make the cut will return to the farm for use as compost. The Spargel that passes the quality checks can be sold locally for anywhere from 6 to 10 euros per kilogram, depending on the year. It's also shipped abroad, where export prices can exceed that range due to the Spargel's short shelf life and the speed required in shipping. That's how it ends up in restaurant kitchens around the world, like Elvin's. Unlike green asparagus, white asparagus must be peeled before it can be eaten, since the long time spent underground causes it to develop a tough, thick outer layer.
A case like this, it will take me 6 to 7 minutes. There are 42 to 48 asparagus in there, depends of size, and then you just tuck. It just goes, and the skin is flying off.
White asparagus is also typically boiled in its own stock, made from these peeled skins.
2 lemons is perfect for my pot here. And I just put this into the water. And we have some salt. That's all we need here to get the water going.
The ends of stalks are also snapped off.
Beautiful. Ah, that was a good one.
And then trimmed to a uniform length before being placed in the stock and boiled for about 10 minutes.
And let them boil.
Now they're ready for plating.
Fine dining restaurants in Europe, when I did this, we had very crisp still. If you do this at home and you eat it right away, you might want to go another 2 minutes.
The most traditional dish, and the most popular one at Café Katia, is boiled asparagus smothered in hollandaise sauce and served with a side of potatoes.
Some parsley potatoes. That's all I need. There's nothing else I need for lunch or dinner. I absolutely don't miss any proteins on this one. There's definitely proteins in the egg, in the hollandaise. That's enough.
He also serves a version covered in lemon vinaigrette with prosciutto and croutons. While demand for white asparagus is as strong as ever, both in Europe and at restaurants abroad like Café Katia, the industry hasn't been immune to recent international crises. During the COVID-19 pandemic, seasonal workers at asparagus farms weren't allowed to cross the border into Germany, inciting fear of a spargel shortage. The German government was forced to pass an emergency bill allowing them into the country. And with Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, rising utility costs and inflation led to European citizens spending less on items like luxury vegetables.
Die Leute greifen wieder zu, die kaufen Spargel, die sagen, okay, diese ganze Diskussion über Kostensteigerungen scheint ja auch vielleicht aufgebläht gewesen zu sein. Die Inflation geht auch wieder zurück, die Energiepreise sind gesunken, die Nebenkostenabrechnung scheint sich zu normalisieren und die Leute sind wieder bereit, Geld auszugeben. Das kommt uns in unserem Bereich Spargel und Erdbeeren sehr entgegen und die Leute kaufen wieder und da sind wir sehr glücklich.
And at Café Katia, as the season draws to a close, Erwin is already thinking about next year.
For me, cooking and preparing and peeling the asparagus, actually I'm looking forward to it every year. And it's a little bit of meditation.
The first thing you notice about this fruit is its shape, from which it gets its name. But Buddha's hand citron is much more than an odd-looking fruit. It's dominating the economy in this Vietnamese community of Dak So because of how much farmers can make selling it.
Quả mình bán đất là 4 triệu. 4 triệu một quả. Mình chủ đạo của mình là cây Phật thủ.
It's estimated that the vast majority of locals earn their living from Buddha's hand. And while a single fruit sells for around $8 locally, it can be 3 times as much abroad. The more perfect the fruit, the higher the price. But reaching perfection isn't easy. These trees have incredibly sensitive roots. That means if any of a number of things goes wrong, a whole farm can be irreparably damaged.
Nếu như bây giờ mình mà có làm sai thì mình phải trả giá. 1-2 năm có nghĩa là mình không có công. Khi mà cây mà nó đã hỏng đã chết rồi thì không thể nào mà trồng lại được nữa. Lại phải di chuyển.
So why do farmers risk their livelihood to grow this fruit? And why is it so expensive? This is Ba Quet, a farmer in Dak So, Vietnam, a small village 45 minutes outside Hanoi. He is one of many farmers in the area supplying these citrons to the capital city.
Thì có nghĩa là cứ mỗi một năm thì mình cứ nhân cái sản lượng vườn lên. Bây giờ như năm nay của mình là đang có 2 vườn. Nó rơi vào hơn 600 gốc. Thì hiện tại năm nay thì bây giờ là vẫn đang cho thu hoạch.
Unlike lemons or oranges, fingered citron has very little juice or pulp. It can be eaten, but it has a mild taste.
Ăn được, thế nhưng mà nó không ngon thôi.
The appeal is in its highly flavorful and aromatic rind.
Thế nhưng mà nó lại chỉ có mùi thơm thôi. Mà mùi thơm của cái phật thủ này thì nó rất là nhẹ và rất là thơm. Nó không như là cái múi bưởi cam, nhưng mà quả bưởi thì nó sẽ bị hăng, bị lồng. Quả phật thủ thì nó rất thơm, rất là mát, rất dễ chịu.
Buddha's hand citrons are incredibly sought after during the Mid-Autumn Festival, known as Tết. This is one of the most important celebrations in Vietnamese culture. The fruits are displayed as an ancestral offering and used in homes to freshen the air. This small village will be the lead supplier of these citrons for the event, so demand will be higher than usual. Today, Ba Quet and his team are harvesting 300 fruits based on the order of one customer.
Thì cái vấn đề mà tâm linh thì người ta rất là tín. Đấy, thế trên ngày giỗ, ngày Tết là gần như là gia đình nào cũng có trái Phật thủ bày trên bàn thờ để thắp hương gia tiên, để nhớ đến cội nguồn.
The festival is the busiest time of year for Ba Quet.
Tết là nó chiếm khoảng 60%. 60% đấy là mình bỏ túi. Còn 40% là mình bỏ chi phí.
Dak So is the main provider of Buddha's hand citron for the nationwide event, and Ba Quet will sell about 3 times more than usual. Because most of his fruits will be sold at the festival, timing is crucial for Ba Quet. His trees need to produce enough fruit on time and grow as big as possible.
Mọi người đều làm như vậy hết. Ví dụ như là bây giờ cũng có một cái máy bơm nước, cũng có một cái máy để xịt thuốc sâu. Đấy, thì cũng có một cái kéo để tỉa cành, để cắt quả. Thì bí quyết là gì? Bí quyết là mình làm cây thời điểm nào, có thể tiện cây, hãm cây đấy, thời điểm nào để cho nó ra quả Tết cho nó sai. Thế còn ngày dưng này thì ngày bình thường như này thì nó có lác đác thôi. Ví dụ cây độ 20-30 quả. Nhưng mà cái thời điểm như Tết thì cây nó 60-70 quả cơ, hàng trăm quả cũng có.
But Ba Quet cannot harvest them all at once. The tree naturally stores water in its roots to feed the fruit, and a complete harvest would send the tree into water shock. This can kill the tree and rot the roots. In turn, it would destroy his future harvest and damage the land.
Thực ra là cái cây này nếu như mà để mà thu hoạch, mà khi mình cắt xuống thì mình nên cắt quả thì mình cứ cắt từ từ. Cứ cắt từ từ có nghĩa là hôm nay cắt một ít, xong mai lại cắt một ít, cứ đi trao khắp vườn thì nó rất tốt cho cây.
He also prefers to harvest the fruit in dry weather, like today.
Nếu khi mình mà thu hoạch vào trời mà trời nó mưa thì nó sẽ bị nước mưa vào mà nó đã dầm thì rất là dễ thối. Thì cái này nó rất là nhiều dầu mà. Còn bắt buộc lắm thì mới phải vào thời điểm mưa. Mà khi mà cắt vào thời điểm mưa thì mình lại phải để ráo nước, khô nước trên quả thì bắt đầu mình mới quấn gói để mình đóng vận chuyển được. Không có thì nó lại hỏng lỏng lẻ lắm.
Eyeballing the weight is also helpful to quickly fulfill the orders.
Thực ra cái này thì bọn mình nhìn quen là bọn mình biết đấy. Bọn mình nhìn quen là bọn mình biết, kể cả từ những cái size quả.
After the harvest, he will need to plant the trees in new soil.
Quay lại cũng được, thế nhưng mà chăm thì nó cũng vất vả hơn. Nó vẫn còn tồn dư một lượng cái tinh dầu trong đất. Thế nên là nó sẽ trồng, nó sẽ phải chăm vất hơn. Cây này thì nó cũng rất là khó chiều đấy. Nếu mà không biết cách thì cũng không chiều nổi nó đâu. Ví dụ như bây giờ mà mình cho nó ăn quá nhiều. Ăn quá nhiều thì nó sẽ dẫn đến bị sót rễ. Còn nếu như mình cho nó ăn nhạt đi, cho nó ít đi, giảm đi thì nó rất phàm ăn, nó rất dễ lên.
The Buddha's hand requires lots of attention and care. This is Ba Quet's main source of income, so he cannot make any mistakes.
Nếu như bây giờ mình mà có làm sai thì mình phải trả giá. Mà mình trả giá là gì? Là cả 1-2 năm, có nghĩa là mình không có công. Khi mà cây mà nó đã hỏng, đã chết rồi thì không thể nào mà trồng lại được nữa. Đấy, lại phải di chuyển.
Buddha's hand trees grow to about 6 feet tall and start bearing fruit after the 10th year. This is one of the reasons the fruit is so expensive compared to a lemon tree, which bears fruit after 6 to 12 months.
Năm đầu tiên mình trồng thì nó cũng có hơi vất một chút, là mình phải chăm nó như một đứa trẻ con. Vì nó còn nhỏ, nó còn yếu, là mình chăm nó, lúc ban đầu là mình phải chăm nó rất cẩn thận.
He also needs to constantly trim the trees and lower the branches to encourage growth.
Và cây này thì nó cũng có cái hơi khác một chút, là nó ra hoa đậu quả ở đầu cành chứ không phải ở lách lá. Thế thì nó cũng, khi bọn mình làm giàn thì là bọn mình lại phải có một cái công đoạn nữa là vít cái cành nó xuống, lấy cái dây vít co cái cành xuống để nó nằm một thời gian, sau đó nó ức chế thì nó tích cái nhựa thì nó sẽ bật cái hoa ở tại cái đầu cành đó. Như cái quả trên tay mình, đây là quả này là đẹp. Thế là tay ngón nó rất đều và rất dài. Đấy. Và rất là đẹp.
The closer the fruit looks to a hand, the more it can be sold for. The fingers are described as beautiful in this stage. Generally, a beautiful Buddha's hand is large and round with many even protruding fingers. Barquette prefers fruits with shorter fingers.
Thì cũng thấy nhiều người thì người ta thích là những cái quả kiểu như thế này, nó nhiều ngón chẳng hạn. Chứ mình thì mình lại không thích cái kiểu như thế này, không thích kiểu như này bằng cái quả kiểu như thế này.
Barquette's choice is not just aesthetic. Since the base is where the fruit stores its essential oils, a bigger base means a bigger and stronger scent.
Kiểu như này thì để nó được rất là lâu này. Cái ngón nó ngắn thì nó không bị mất nước. Mà không bị mất nước thì nó trông thì thôi, nhưng cái bọng dầu nó rất to.
Because of these essential oils, Buddha's hands have long been used in Asian medicine, although there's no scientific evidence to support how effective it is. The fingers expand and open up only when the fruit is ripe, but farmers can't control how the fingers are going to behave. A single tree can produce multiple fruits with different shapes.
Cái trái Phật thủ này thì nó hoàn toàn nó ra tự nhiên chứ không có tác động về cái hình dáng của quả Phật thủ được. Ví dụ như nó theo mùa, có mùa thì nó ra những cái ngón nó ít, thế nhưng mà nó dài. Có những cái mùa, những cái thời điểm nó ra thì nó ra cái ngón nó nhiều và nó ngắn hơn.
A big threat to growing the perfect fruit? Insects. When the trees are in bloom, they become very attractive to insects and pests. A serious threat is the Asian citrus psyllid, which also destroys citrus as far as the US.
Nếu như mà mình phát hiện kịp thời thì nó sẽ mất khoảng độ 5 đến 7%. Còn nếu như mà để mà không phát hiện được thì 100% luôn, 100% hỏng luôn. Những cái trái này là trái nó bị hỏng này. Nó là những cái dòng chi hút nó làm bị đen cái quả. Rất tiếc nhưng mà phải bỏ.
After the healthy fruits are harvested, there's still another important step: packaging. The fingers break off very easily, so Barquette takes special precautions to protect them.
Xe rồi lại phải lót vào đây, xong lại giấy báo với giấy mềm là phải quấn đầy đủ, không được để nó hở. Nó mà hở là những cái quả lọ nó cứ đè vào kia là nó sẽ bị hỏng mất.
With this careful wrapping, he can keep the fruits fresh and potent for at least 3 months.
Đóng gói vận chuyển mà cũng không khéo là cũng coi như đáng đẹp, cũng đáng mà nó đẹp thì nó cũng thành xấu. sản lượng năm nay là có tốt hơn năm ngoái một chút. Đấy, thì còn kể cả cái sản lượng mà của Tết năm nay.
Barquet has completed today's order and it's ready to be delivered. But it's just the start as he gets ready to sell for the festival, not only locally, but for expats honouring their ancestors, as well as new customers all over the world. Locally, he sells his fruits for 50,000 to 200,000 Vietnamese dong, about $2 to $8 each. But he also sells to international markets.
Thế có cái là bây giờ những cái quả như này bọn mình làm thì quả đẹp thì mình có thể là mình bán ở trong nước, cũng có xuất cả nước ngoài rồi. Đấy, ví dụ như có Malai, có Nga, có Anh, có Đức, và cái quả đó mình xuất khẩu sang cũng là gì? Là người Việt bên các nước là người ta dùng.
In the UK, a single-fingered citron costs £25, while in the US, a box of 5 costs $65. Pastry chefs and liquor makers also buy the citron abroad, particularly the dried versions. Barquet sells dried but his hand fingers from the less beautiful fruits. Traders only pay around $1 per kilogram. But Barquet sells several thousand tons a year.
Thực ra cái này thì nó cũng tự mình tìm tòi ra thôi, chứ cũng không có sách vở nào mà dạy mình cả. Ví dụ như là bây giờ anh mình làm thì mình có thể là mình học hỏi từ người đi trước, các cái lớp đàn anh mình. Thực ra là bây giờ mình cũng muốn chia sẻ là cái quả Phật thù này được các bạn nước ngoài là biết đến nhiều hơn, hoặc là những người con xa quê đang định cư nước ngoài là người ta cũng biết và cũng được đúng những cái mà người ta mong muốn là gì, có những quả Phật thù này ở bên các nước để người ta được dùng.
Today, Victor is climbing trees up to 40 feet high, equipped with a homemade axe, a rope, and his own bare feet, which he's using to reach something very valuable, the fruits that'll be turned into red palm oil. Standard palm oil, or palm kernel oil, is known for being quite cheap, but red palm oil can cost 3 times as much. When it's shipped to the US or the UK, it can sell for even more, up to $20 for a single litre.
Where I see person they fall, I know they fear if I don't climb up.
Workers like Victor face snakes and the risk of falling just to harvest this valuable fruit. But what makes red palm oil different from palm oil, and what exactly makes it so expensive?
This is what palm oil looks like. Our local palm oil. I actually prefer to cook with red palm oil because of the taste.
Red palm oil has a mildly floral flavour and a buttery texture.
Palm oil generally is used for our local food. All the time, all the time, all the time.
Here, in Ondo State, Nigeria, making this local favourite is a labour-intensive and artisanal process. Thousands of fleshy palm fruits are transformed into yellow-brown sludge and then red-orange oil over the course of a week. It all starts on oil palm plantations like this one in the village of Aye. Every few weeks, expert climbers are called in to harvest the palm husks. The trees here can be as high as 60 feet. Climbers like Victor don't wear any protective gear, relying on just handmade harnesses and axes to help them up the palm trees.
And this is our rope, I think they cut it.
Victor makes new ropes with fresh palm fibres whenever he feels his current one isn't strong or tight enough. This is important because old rope can become brittle and snap.
And sometimes, some people they use their life. See my own now. With another people, they will see they use it. Don't sit now, you don't hold, and don't they break. You are the clown. Gentle, gentle, no rush. This my ass. Go hook up for your itch.
It takes 3 years for oil palm trees to bear fruit, but once they do, they can be harvested year-round.
Sometimes they call 200. Well, every person won't learn this work. I feel teach am well. All these things, I no go gree, make this rope grow up. Go clean am comot. Now, where I wan cut it now. See it now.
The biggest obstacle Victor faces once he's climbing is snakes.
Or if you carry your ass, say one cut, that snake go touch your rope and that person go fall.
The risk of falling has led some workers to stop climbing and instead help with collecting the palm husks from the safety of the ground.
I need to climb tree because before they climb this banga, as this banga they so danger they. As if you climb, if you go there, you go see snake for up.
It's very difficult to separate the fresh fruit from the thick, spiky palm husks. So, they're left out to dry. This time also allows the fruit to ferment, which elevates the oil's flavour. After 3 or 4 days, the fruits are ready to be dehusked. Randy and other workers use axes to break the husks and sift the fruits to separate them from dirt. They collect the fruit in large sacks and transport it to a processing site in the nearby village of Ireze. Randy delivers the palm fruits to his wife, Deborah, who is one of the many workers toiling away to transform the fruits into red palm oil. The sacks of fruit are dumped into buckets and large drums.
As it is, so for that one drum, in a better agree with the C2 so like this, it don't ferment. See like this. If you don't ferment, like some people, if they say like this, they say you don't rot, you don't rot you.
Water is added to the drums to boil the fruit.
I go pour water, but make the water not too much. You, I get up about what they make your water put. No, we know the test them. We are local, so we know the test any decoration. No, we know the add chemical.
After 1 hour, the fruit is ready to be drained and taken to the miller.
See now inside this drum, they boil. See the water, it don't change. What would they do before? If they don't go cut them for farm, if we don't pick and finish, it gets more people we don't do by ourselves. We don't carry cement, do them very well. Now there they go, if they don't cook and finish, now there, they go they match them with legs.
But the mill still involves a significant amount of labour, as someone must manually load and empty the fruit. After the mill, it's time for another recently acquired machine: a hydraulic press. The fruit, which has been milled into a pulp, is pressed to release its oil. No kernel oil is released here because that would require the seeds to be dried and cracked. Some locals do produce kernel oil, but since it's more difficult to make without special machinery, it's not as common. While oil palms originated in West Africa, colonization led to the rapid expansion of oil palm plantations throughout Southeast Asia. Eventually, Southeast Asia took over the global palm oil industry, and as other oils also grew in popularity, West Africa never quite caught up. West Africa's rainy season, which typically lasts from May to October, is also an ongoing issue.
Rainy season, if rain fall, if you climb a tree, means maybe you don't plan, you want to kill yourself. Because you know good man, you go climb when rain fall, the pantry go to draw.
So when it's raining, no one is climbing the trees, which means the fruit often goes rotten. And thanks to climate change, the rainy season has been lasting longer, causing more damage. This decreases the already low supply of palm fruits and raises the price of red palm oil. In contrast, palm kernel oil plantations harvest on a massive scale and rely on heavy machinery for the bulk of their production.
But you get work, we dey suffer for this thing. Government, I no see government where can support me. I no get any support. I myself dey suffer with my children, with my wife, with my friends.
Our engine, our mainly engine, we don't get money to buy big one or the one we go give us guarantee say this one we fit use and like 5 years we no go disturb us. So now it.
After enough oil has been collected in the large bowls underneath the press, workers carefully scoop the orange-red liquid into other bowls and buckets. The oil is poured into drums for a final boil. After 1 hour, the fire is put out and the oil is left to cool off. The finished oil is moved into buckets, then funneled into jerry cans. Deborah says some customers travel all the way from Lagos State, which is about 5 hours away by car, to buy her red palm oil.
Some people think I will do more than 15 cake, 30 litre.
These kegs sell for $30 each. Although the price can change depending on the supply of palm fruits.
I know they appeal. Now I know they carry my oil and go market. I dey sell it for my house. I get plenty customer.
The price of red palm oil can also vary depending on location. A 4-litre bottle at a supermarket in a bigger city like Lagos can cost around $18, making it the same price or even cheaper than some imported vegetable oils, thanks to Nigeria's volatile exchange rates. Meanwhile, the red palm oil that is exported outside of West Africa is exponentially more expensive, ranging from $15 to $20 for 1 litre in the US, and the cost may only be getting higher. Cooking oil prices have been on the rise thanks to weather-related supply shortages in countries like Argentina and Canada. The Russian invasion of Ukraine also cut the world off from the region's supply of sunflower oil and led Indonesia to ban some exports of its palm oil. All this raised the global price of cooking oils even higher. As a result, the local cost of red palm oil in Nigeria has also increased, but for many people, the price is worth the taste.
Our own, I believe in my own knowing, you say it better. The price, at the expense, say me they don't tell me say don't they go up more, because they work, not the easy.
In just a few hours, these salt crystals will disappear. They are fleur de sel crystals, unique to salt marshes like this one in Bête-sur-Mer, western France. Cédric has to harvest the fleur de sel now, or it will sink to the bottom of the pond, ruining the properties that make it unique. Fleur de sel is a salt that dissolves slowly, so its taste lingers in the mouth.
Là, je vais sentir le cristal dans la bouche, je vais avoir le côté craquant sous la dent, justement.
That's part of why it sells for 230 times more than table salt domestically, and for up to $420 per kilogram outside French borders. But just about every step of the process to get this salt is difficult. Before harvesting, the wind has to be perfect. And during the harvest, salt producers like Cédric need to be ready to collect the precious salt at any moment, or they won't make a profit.
Alors, le vent est un peu fort là, ce qui fait que si on laisse la fleur trop longtemps, elle va grossir et elle va couler.
Even if they seize the right moment, the salt has to dry for an entire year before it can be sold. So is it always worth it to produce fleur de sel? And why is it so expensive?
Alors là, il est 17 h et on va aller sur les marais pour aller récupérer la fleur de sel. Là, les conditions sont idéales. Il fait beau, on est en milieu de saison. La fleur de sel va se former à partir du début de l'après-midi. Elle va continuer à s'agglomérer jusqu'à la fin de journée. Et du coup, en fait, c'est le vent, c'est l'action du vent à la surface de l'eau qui va permettre au sel de cristalliser. Voilà, bah là, on voit qu'il y a de la fleur de sel.
Cédric is a paludier, what salt harvesters are known as in Batz-sur-Mer. Here, the close proximity to the sea allows salt producers to easily divert water to shallow ponds, dug in blue clay. Unlike table salt, which is typically mined from underground, fleur de sel comes to the surface of the pond naturally. It's seawater that is slowly evaporating in the summer heat.
Il faut que l'eau, donc la saumure, soit suffisamment dense en termes de sel. Et ensuite, c'est le vent qui, à la surface de l'eau, va venir assécher la surface de l'eau. Et là, c'est des petits grains qui vont commencer à se former. Et au fur et à mesure qu'ils vont se former, ils vont s'agglomérer, un petit peu comme des molécules en fait, qui vont se rapprocher. Sur un œillet, on va avoir 2 à 3 cm maximum sur les côtés d'eau. Et au centre, on aura moins, on aura à peu près un demi-centimètre à 1 cm maximum. Et on va mettre de l'eau le matin et au fur et à mesure de la journée, l'eau va s'évaporer pour laisser place au cristal. Alors les métiers de paludier, c'est des métiers de passion. Hein. C'est des métiers qu'on ne peut pas faire si on n'aime pas la terre sur laquelle on est, sur laquelle on travaille, parce qu'on y passe beaucoup de temps. On se lève très tôt le matin, on se lève en même temps que le soleil, on commence à venir travailler en même temps que le soleil.
Fleur de sel literally translates to flower of salt, but there are no flowers in it. Its name is a play on words with the French verb effleurer, which means coming up to the surface.
Comme c'est à 2 cm, il y a 2 cm d'eau maximum en dessous, c'est un travail très délicat. On va affleurer la surface de l'eau pour récolter le sel. Si je soulève l'argile, du coup ma fleur elle va être toute noire. Et je ne suis pas sûr qu'une fleur de sel noire ça plaise aux gens.
Once it forms, the harvest window is very short.
Voilà, le grain est assez gros, il est assez cristallin, donc il y a une belle fleur là ce soir. Il faut être là pour la récolter. C'est pas toi qui fais le sel, c'est le temps qui fait le sel.
Anything like sudden rain or algae stuck in the water system could ruin the salt at any time.
C'est une saison qui met les organismes à l'épreuve pour une raison simple, c'est qu'il fait extrêmement chaud. Et les œillets sont très durs à gérer parce qu'ils montent très vite aussi en température. Donc il faut en permanence surveiller, mais surveiller de très près son eau pour que l'eau ne monte pas trop fort en température. Parce que sinon, dans la cristallisation, c'est plus le chlorure de sodium qui cristallise, mais c'est le chlorure de calcium. Et là, on n'est plus sur du sel alimentaire.
This natural harvest method means that the salt has a high moisture content.
Alors le taux d'humidité, on va avoir un taux très fort hein, qui va être à 20, 30, 40% quand on va sortir le sel de l'eau. Et là, pour moi, l'hygrométrie idéale dans un sel, c'est 6 à 8%. Ça permet de garder un petit côté gras, ça permet de continuer à garder ce goût salin en bouche.
When a salt crystal is high in moisture, it doesn't contain just water.
Alors la fleur de sel, c'est toute une multitude de minéraux. D'un côté, il y a le chlorure de sodium. Le chlorure de sodium, c'est le cristal. Et à l'intérieur de ce cristal-là, on a de l'humidité. Et là, on a du chlorure de potassium, de magnésium, de calcium. Plus la saison avance, plus la salinité de l'eau va être forte. L'eau de mer, c'est 30 grammes de sel par litre d'eau. Ici, c'est 300 grammes de sel par litre d'eau.
To lower the moisture but preserve the nutrients inside the salt crystals, Cédric cannot speed up the drying process. He needs to let it dry slowly for an entire year before it's ready to be sold.
Quand tu sèches le sel, en fait, ça détruit une partie des impuretés parce que c'est séché à haute température. Mais ça va aussi détruire potentiellement les nutriments du sel. Alors qu'un sel qui est juste égoutté, bah, tu vas avoir des petites impuretés à l'intérieur. Mais du coup, tu gardes tous les nutriments. Alors ça peut être plusieurs choses. Ça peut être soit des insectes, des petits insectes qui se sont fait attraper pendant la cristallisation. soit ça peut être une petite herbe, soit ça peut être une petite bille d'argile. Donc tu as un peu plus de travail et c'est pour ça qu'on a un travail de tri derrière, c'est pour garder la qualité en fait du produit. Et la différence, c'est que la fleur de sel, elle va être beaucoup plus blanche, beaucoup plus fine, plus légère, plus aérienne, beaucoup plus cristalline. Il y aura ce côté cristallin de la fleur de sel. Et c'est vrai que c'est un sel qu'on utilise quasiment que comme sel de table par rapport à sa texture, par rapport à sa couleur, par rapport à tous ces attraits-là.
This is what sets fleur de sel apart from table salt, which contains little to no moisture, but also from other wet salts that are dried naturally but have been harvested differently. Cédric wanted to be even more specific, so he started to classify his salts based on the different winds blowing here. This had never been done before. The predominant winds here blow from the west and northwest.
Alors aujourd'hui, on est en pur vent d'ouest, ça souffle assez fort. La fleur est un peu plus grossière, mais elle est souvent bien blanche. Moi, j'aime bien le vent d'ouest parce qu'il y a le côté, j'aime beaucoup le côté crunchy en fait du sel. Les vents d'ouest sont des vents de mer, donc du coup, c'est des vents qui sont plus humides. Et le grain, quand il se forme, il est plus gros parce que les pressions atmosphériques sont aussi moins fortes. Alors que les vents d'est sont les vents de terre, c'est des vents qui sont plus chauds, plus rasants, et du coup, le cristal est plus fin quand il va se former. Là, il va y avoir en fait deux fleurs de sel différentes. Là, on a la fleur de sel de vent de sud, donc avec le grain qui est très très fin, extrêmement fin. Et là, on a de la fleur de sel qui est de vent d'ouest, avec un grain qui va être plus gros, avec plus de croquant, un côté beaucoup plus crunchy en fait. Tu vois, celui-là, on ne va pas l'entendre en fait quand il va tomber, quasiment pas, il n'y aura quasiment pas de bruit. Parce que justement, il est extrêmement fin. Alors que celui-là, avec le grain qui est plus gros, hop, on va entendre quand il va tomber.
In France, Cédric's custom salt can sell for over 10 times as much as other types of fleur de sel. Abroad, it can reach $420 per kilogram.
La fleur de sel, c'est un produit de niche parce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens, il y a beaucoup d'idées préconçues sur le sel. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui disent le sel, c'est pas bon pour la santé, alors que c'est pas le sel qui est pas bon pour la santé, c'est le mauvais sel qui est pas bon pour la santé. Après, les gens, aujourd'hui, c'est sûr que s'ils comparent par rapport à un sel industriel, ça sera pas du tout le même prix. Parce que c'est pas du tout la même activité, c'est pas du tout le même sel, donc on peut pas du tout les comparer.
His most expensive fleur de sel is this one, nicknamed Snow. A 100-gram box sells for €23. Cédric created it by studying the salinity levels in the pond, combined with a very rare wind.
Alors ça, c'est une fleur de sel neige. Cette fleur de sel, c'est une fleur de sel qui est produite par vent de sud. Les vents de sud sont plutôt rares sur la presqu'île. En général, on la fait en fin de saison et ça lui donne une texture extrêmement fine, extrêmement douce. On va en faire, certaines années, on n'en aura pas du tout. Et d'autres années, on va en faire entre 200 et 400 kg sur l'ensemble de la production. Donc c'est vraiment tout petit, c'est en termes de quantité. Ça sera un tiers plus cher à peu près, par rapport à la rareté du produit. On dirait des boules de neige. En fait, le sel est beaucoup plus compact. C'est comme il est beaucoup plus fin, quand il sèche, les grains vont s'agglomérer entre eux. C'est beaucoup plus puissant que l'autre, ouais. Et tu as beaucoup plus de longueur. Là, je vais sentir le cristal dans la bouche, je vais avoir le côté craquant sous la dent, justement, que je n'aurai pas du tout avec la fleur de sel neige. La neige va fondre, en fait, quand on fera de la cuisine, alors que la vent d'ouest va justement croquer sous la dent.
Cédric wasn't born into this job. He started harvesting salt as a hobby with friends 20 years ago. At the time, he had an office job in Paris.
C'est un changement qui est radical. Alors te dire, j'ai une société dans le domaine des ressources humaines sur la région parisienne et demain matin, en fait, tu deviens agriculteur. C'est un changement qui s'organise, qui s'anticipe. Et ce temps de préparation, ça a été aussi le temps d'apprentissage. Et à un moment donné, tu te sens prêt, tu y vas et tu dis « Ok, stop, j'arrête de monter dans le train, je reste là et je commence à récolter du sel sérieusement. »
Today, he works with another paludier on 62 salt ponds, and he collaborates with 10 other companies on over 100 ponds.
Certains paludiers, effectivement, m'ont appris au fur et à mesure, avec le temps. C'est des gens qui m'ont donné leur savoir-faire. Et c'est quelque chose de très très noble. Ce qui est important, c'est qu'on a une vraie valeur ajoutée en fait, dans ce qu'on fait et la manière dont on le fait.
Fleur de sel is actually a byproduct of another type of salt, coarse salt.
Sous la fleur de sel, on le voit ici, il y a le gros sel qui a cristallisé directement sur l'argile.
In the pond, it's a symphony between the two.
Tu vois, là, je leur donne de l'eau pour remettre un petit peu plus d'eau à l'intérieur. Il ne faut pas travailler directement sur l'argile, sinon je vais décoller complètement l'argile. Il ne faut pas non plus surcharger en termes de volume d'eau. Si tu surcharges, après, le sel ne cristallise pas.
Cédric can only harvest coarse salt in the morning before fleur de sel forms, or just after harvesting it in the late afternoon. These movements are too harsh for fleur de sel and would instantly destroy it.
Tu as une différence de couleur parce que le gros sel, il va cristalliser dans le fond de l'œillet directement sur l'argile, alors que la fleur de sel, elle va cristalliser à la surface de l'eau. Elle ne sera pas directement en contact avec l'argile.
For a paludier, coarse salt takes up most of the time at work, and also most of the harvest. For every 10 kilos of coarse salt, there is only 1 kilogram of fleur de sel. Still, because of the hand harvest method, this coarse salt remains 7 times as expensive as table salt. But Cédric didn't want to stop at the wins with his salt. He now plays with moisture to develop new flavours. His most successful creation was this one, smoked salt.
Et l'idée d'avoir le fumoir dans mon jardin, c'était quelque chose qui me plaisait beaucoup. Donc là, c'est effectivement le fumoir en fait, que j'ai construit ici. L'idée, c'était d'intégrer les 2 fumoirs dans l'espace à côté de la maison pour être tout le temps présent, parce que c'est un travail que je fais le soir. Donc comme je fais fumer le sel globalement le soir, pour pas que ça monte en température et rester toujours sur une fumaison à froid.
Cédric uses a mix of west and east wind salts that have already dried for 1 year. The salt smokes for 12 hours.
Ça, c'est le sel qui a été fumé. Ça fait une croûte sur le dessus. Regarde. Tu vois, le dessous est beaucoup plus clair. Il est moins fumé. Et après, c'est en le brassant que ça va se diffuser. Ça ne va pas changer la texture. La texture va rester la même. Et en fait, c'est l'humidité qui va absorber et après qui va diffuser. Est-ce que je peux décrire? Ça sent le fumé, ça sent le bois en fait. Il y a 2 odeurs de fumée. Tu as le côté fumé, avec justement la sciure de bois de hêtre, parce que c'est un sel qui est fumé au bois de hêtre. Et il y a un tonneau qui est fait en hêtre et qui va diffuser justement ces odeurs de bois. Ça se marie avec plein de choses. Avec le poisson, ça va donner un côté fumé. Avec une viande, ça va donner un côté barbecue. Tu peux en mettre sur une mousse au chocolat. Faut essayer, voir ce qu'on aime, ce qu'on n'aime pas. Moi, j'adore sur un fromage frais. Fromage frais, sel fumé, juste un filet d'huile. Voilà, je trouve ça très très bon.
He's now collaborating with chefs to create custom salts.
Pour moi, c'est... En fait, il y a une vraie satisfaction personnelle. Quelque part, c'est une reconnexion avec son environnement. Quelque chose qui fait du sens. Ça a du sens d'être paludier, c'est-à-dire que tous les jours, on va produire quelque chose qui va s'incarner dans le réel. Et si on fait bien notre métier, en plus, derrière, ce qu'on va produire aura une belle utilisation. Et au-delà de ça, c'est un travail ancestral. On est là pour transmettre. Aujourd'hui, nous, on le fait. Demain, ça sera quelqu'un d'autre. Et après-demain, lui-même aussi transmettra à quelqu'un d'autre.